Welcome to the deep dive. Starting with a new language, it can be a little scary.
It can be.
You've brought us this cheat sheet of 45 essential English sentences. And I have to say, it's a smart move.
Yeah.
These phrase books are designed to give you the essential tools you need to start talking fast.
Yeah.
We're going to take a deep dive into 45 sentences for daily conversation in beginner level and see what we can learn.
What's so fascinating about these cheat sheets is they can be a launch pad.
Okay.
Think of these phrases as the musical scales that you need to master before you can compose a symphony of conversation.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so the source jumps right into greetings. We see your classic hello, how are you? But also, hi, how's it going? For a more casual vibe. It's interesting how just changing a word or two can shift the tone, right?
Absolutely, and that's where all those cultural nuances come in. Even a simple how are you can have a wildly different meaning depending on where you are. In some cultures, you might get a 5-minute rundown of someone's entire day, while in others, it's just a quick, fine, thanks.
It makes you realize how much is communicated beyond just the words themselves.
Totally.
It's like there's a whole secret code that you need to crack.
Yeah.
But before we get too lost in the subtleties, I'm drawn to the asking for help section.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me?
Yeah.
It's such a simple phrase. I bet it could be a lifesaver in a tricky situation.
Absolutely, it can. Now, think about how the phrasing can change the level of politeness.
Oh, yeah.
The cheat sheet gives us, I need some help, please. Adding please adds that touch of formality.
Oh, it's amazing how one word can make such a difference.
Right.
We've also got variations like, I need to see a doctor, or even, can you call a doctor for me?
Exactly. And those variations can be crucial depending on the urgency of the situation. Imagine needing to ask for help in an emergency. You don't want to waste time with overly formal language.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It makes you appreciate how much thought goes into crafting these seemingly simple phrases.
Yeah, it really does.
Okay, let's move on to the giving directions section. Now, go straight and turn left. Might seem basic, but if you're lost in a new city, those instructions become your lifeline.
And notice how these phrases for giving directions often follow a pattern. It's verb plus direction plus landmark. For example, walk 2 blocks and turn right at the bookstore.
You're right. It's like a formula for clear communication.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if there are other patterns hidden within these 45 sentences.
I think that's a great question to keep in mind as we continue our deep dive.
Okay, so let's
keep going.
Let's keep going.
Yeah. Welcome back to our deep dive.
It really is. Speaking of navigating new situations, let's look at how these phrases can help you when you're hungry.
Oh, yeah.
Because ordering food in another language,
Oh, yeah.
it can feel really daunting.
Yeah.
But these phrases make it a breeze.
Yeah.
I would like, or can I have? They're straightforward and polite.
And notice how the cheat sheet gives us options for different levels of formality.
Okay.
For example, I would like sounds more deferential than can I have.
Yeah.
Linguistically, would like implies a greater degree of politeness because it expresses a desire rather than a demand.
It's fascinating how subtle shifts in language can convey so much.
Right.
I'm also noticing how the source includes phrases about liking and disliking things.
Uh-huh.
Imagine traveling to a new place and being able to say, I like this place. It's such a simple way to express your enjoyment.
And think about the connections you can forge with people.
Yeah.
Sharing your preferences, whether it's for food, activities, or even just a particular spot, it can open up conversations and create a sense of shared experience. It's like you're inviting people into your world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, being able to say, I don't like spicy food, could save you from some serious culinary discomfort.
For sure.
It's all about setting boundaries and communicating your needs, even in seemingly small ways. Do you think that learning these basic phrases can actually boost someone's confidence when traveling or interacting with people from other cultures?
I absolutely believe so. Remember, the goal isn't to become fluent overnight.
Right.
It's about taking those first steps and feeling empowered to communicate.
Yeah.
Even a few phrases can make a world of difference.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you needed to communicate something urgently but didn't have the language skills?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Just last month, I was traveling and got a terrible headache. I knew how to say, I am feeling sick,
Yeah.
but I didn't know how to describe the specific symptoms.
And that's where things can get tricky.
Yeah.
The cheat sheet gives us, I am feeling sick as a starting point.
Right.
But think about all the nuances of illness,
Yeah.
a headache, a stomach ache, dizziness. How would you describe those specific symptoms? What other phrases could they have included to cover these situations?
That's a great point. I hadn't even considered that.
Yeah.
It's like the cheat sheet gives you a basic framework.
Yeah.
But you still need to be able to adapt and expand on those phrases to fit specific situations.
For sure.
What other areas do you think this sheet could have expanded on?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
There are so many possibilities.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful to include phrases for clarifying information or asking for repetition.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine you're in a noisy environment and can't quite understand what someone is saying.
Right.
Being able to say, "Could you repeat that, please?" or "Can you speak slower?" would be incredibly useful.
Those are great additions.
Yeah.
It makes me realize that effective communication is a two-way street.
Totally.
It's not just about speaking, but also about listening and making sure you understand what's being said. I think we are almost out of time for part 2.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
But before we wrap up, I want to emphasize that language learning is a journey, not a destination.
Right?
Embrace the challenges, celebrate the successes, and never stop exploring the fascinating world of language and culture.
Welcome back. I have to say, this deep dive has really gotten me thinking about all the things we take for granted when we communicate.
Yeah.
It's like there's this whole hidden layer of meaning beneath the surface.
It's true. We were just talking about how these basic phrases can help you navigate different situations, but what's equally important is understanding the cultural context in which those phrases are used.
Exactly. Like we talked about how are you? Can be just like a simple pleasantry in some cultures,
Yeah.
but a genuine invitation for a long conversation in others.
Right.
What other phrases in this cheat sheet strike you as being like culturally sensitive?
Well, even something as simple as saying thank you can vary greatly.
Oh, wow.
In some cultures, a simple thanks is sufficient, while in others, a more formal expression of gratitude is expected.
Okay.
For example, in Japan, there are different levels of formality for expressing thanks, depending on the social hierarchy and the nature of the favor.
That's fascinating. So how can someone who's just starting out with a new language learn to navigate these cultural nuances? It seems like it could be a bit overwhelming.
That's a great question. One of the best ways is simply to observe how native speakers interact. Pay attention to their tone of voice, their body language, and the level of formality they use in different situations. It's like becoming a cultural detective.
I love that analogy. You have to look for those subtle clues and piece together the puzzle of communication. Have you ever had any experiences where you accidentally miscommunicated because of a cultural difference?
Oh, absolutely. I remember once, early in my English learning journey, I tried to compliment someone on their cooking by saying it was interesting. I meant it sincerely, but in English, interesting can sometimes be interpreted as a polite way of saying something isn't very good. Thankfully, the person understood my intention, but it was a good lesson in the importance of understanding those subtle cultural differences.
It's a good reminder that even when we're trying to be polite, things can get lost in translation.
Yes.
But that's all part of the learning process, right? What advice would you give to someone who's feeling discouraged or overwhelmed by the prospect of learning a new language?
I would say focus on the small victories. Every new word you learn, every phrase you master, every conversation you have, no matter how small, it's a step in the right direction. Celebrate those successes and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we learn and grow.
I think that's a great note to end on. It's been such a pleasure exploring these 45 essential English sentences with you.
Likewise.
It really highlights how much more there is to language than just memorizing words and grammar rules.
Absolutely. Language is a tool for connection, for understanding, for sharing our experiences with the world. It's a journey worth taking, and I encourage everyone to embrace the adventure.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've learned something new and feel inspired to continue your own language learning journey.